Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 8, 2023 meetings of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. I apologize that we are starting a little bit late today. We were in the back in executive session discussing police disciplinary matters. We have three meetings this evening: Building and Planning Committee, Police Committee, and a special Board of Commissioners meeting. Before we start, just a couple of announcements. One, please silence your cell phones. Two, there's equipment for the hearing impaired. It's available if needed. Three, when the floor is open for public comment, please note that comment will first be taken from those present in the room and then from those attending virtually. Please use the podium over there to my right and speak directly into the microphone so we have every opportunity to hear you. For those on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand if you'd like to speak during public comment opportunities, and our Township Secretary will be able to identify you. And for all members of the public speaking, please introduce yourself prior to beginning your comments. Also, if you're making comments this evening and at all of our meetings, be aware that the board and when appropriate staff will respond to comments and questions after all of the public comment is finished. So it's not a back and forth. We won't be responding immediately after each comment. And finally, if you're here to comment about the disciplinary action on the police committee meeting agenda, please do so during the police committee meeting rather than later during public comment at the special Board of Commissioners meeting. With that said, I'll call on Commissioner Grimes to chair our Building and Planning Committee meeting. Commissioner Grimes, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Vice President Gavin. Good evening, everyone. We have 8 items on the Building and Planning agenda tonight. The first is the release of funds in escrow. Before I make a motion, are there any commissioners who would like to individually consider any of these escrow matters? I see none. So I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to release funds held in escrow as improvement guarantees in accordance with Section 135-5 of the Township Code for the following: 150 Monument Road escrow release number 4 for $176,606. Gladwin Montessori School, 920 Youngsford Road escrow release number 2 for $362,447. Bryn Mawr Presbyterian Church, 625 Montgomery Avenue, escrow release number 4 for $13,082, and 655 Matson Ford Road, escrow release number 1 for $20,000. Is there a second? Thank you, Vice President Gavin. Any commissioner questions or comments? Are there any public comment on any of these items? Anyone online? No? Okay. I will call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? Raise your hands. Nay. Any abstentions? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item, the certificate of appropriateness, is on page 15 of the revised agenda. There's only one item. So I am, to start the conversation, I am going to move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a certificate of appropriateness as recommended by the Historical Architectural Review Board at the meeting held on March 7, 2023 for 47 West Lancaster Avenue rear, Ardmore Commercial Historic District 23-05. Is there a second? Thank you, Vice President Gavin. We have Greg Pritchard here. Are there any commissioners who would like to hear the presentation on this matter, which is also in our packets? I see none. Any commissioner comments or questions on this? I see none. Is there any public comment on this matter? Hearing none. Anyone? No one online. So I will call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Thank you. Any opposed? I see no opposition. Any abstentions? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item, approval of historical commission applications, page 20 of the revised agenda. And I am going to move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following of the application as recommended by the Historical Commission at their meeting held on February 27, 2023 for 1502 Old Gulf Road, Class 2, 2023-R-08. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner McComb. This was also in our packets. Are there any commissioners who would like Mr. Pritchard to give a presentation? His feelings won't be hurt if people say no. Okay, I see none. Any commissioner questions or comments on this matter? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this matter? Anyone online? Okay, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? There's one opposed. And any abstentions? Okay, so
He wasn't opposed,
I'm sorry?
It was just slow.
It's just slow.
Oh, well, just to confirm, Commissioner Stevenson, could you tell us how you voted on this, not to put you on the spot? Yeah, thank you.
He voted with his hand.
Was that it? I know.
I thought I raised my hand in affirmative.
Oh, affirmative, okay, thank you. So it passes, thank you very much. Passes unanimously. All right, the next item is the authorization to advertise the ordinance, appointing this to the Planning Commission. I apologize, on page 21. And I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the appointment of Philippa Ashby to the Planning Commission for a 4-year term to expire in March 2027. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner McKeon. Any commissioner comments on this matter? Commissioner McKeon, please.
So I chair the Ad hoc Nominations Committee and work with Commissioner Stevenson, Commissioner Whalen. We interviewed over 20 applicants recently for 3 positions in the township. Ms. Ashby is a Wynwood resident. She has an MBA from Penn Wharton. She went to Brown University. Significant experience in the business sector. She's also been a longtime contributor to the township. Belongs to Wynwood Civic Association, worked at Rolling Hill Park about 20 years ago to get the dog park worked on. So we're very excited to bring her along. And I say this once we usually complete our rounds of interviews. There's so many talented people in the township who come out for these interviews, and it's very, very difficult because we end up turning away many people who we think could also be great contributors. So we just wanted to welcome Ms. Ashby to the Planning Commission and also say to everyone else, please stay engaged. We appreciate your enthusiasm, and we want to keep bringing great people into the township for these advisory boards.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner McKeon. Anyone else like to comment? Seeing none, let me just thank our appointee for her service as with the others who are on all of our commissions. We appreciate the time and effort they expend on these advisory boards. So, is there any public comment on this matter? Please, if you'll just start with your name and neighborhood you live in, go ahead.
Adrian Seltzer, Wynwood, and I'm just saying how lucky we are in this township to have Philippa Ashby on our Planning Commission. Good work, guys.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? Is there anyone online? Okay. So I'll call the vote on this. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? See none. Any abstentions? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item on page 22, and this is concerning an authorization to advertise an ordinance to rescind an ordinance number 4257 concerning electoral districts. I am going to ask our township manager if he just wants to make some brief comments on this.
Certainly, Commissioner. The county rejected our redistricting plan on the basis that it did not follow magisterial district boundaries, and also potentially because we corrected the split of the congressional district in one ward. County, of course, the time has passed to be able to correct this and do anything for the redistricting for the 2023 election cycle. The county's promised to work with us to try and work out a compromise that they can approve and send on to the Court of Common Pleas for approval. So this is simply an action that we would take to make sure our historical record is correct. We don't want an ordinance on the books that never went into effect and doesn't reflect the reality of what our wards are. So this is taking that step to remove this from our ordinance book and from our historic record.
Okay, thank you. So, Commissioner
Just had a quick procedural question. I'm not sure if this is belt and suspenders. Wasn't the ordinance predicated upon its acceptance?
It was not. It was simply adopted a new ward redistricting scheme, but the ordinance didn't have a fail provision if the county didn't accept it.
Right, but as a matter of law, okay. All right, you know what, forget it. We have to do this. Sorry, thank you.
Not at all. So let me just get the ball rolling. I am going to move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise notice of intention to adopt an ordinance to rescind Ordinance 4257, enacted January 11, 2023, changing the boundary lines of township wards. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner McComb. Okay, are there any other commissioners who would like to make any comments or ask any questions of our township manager on this? Seeing none. Is there any public comment on this matter? Please.
Hello, Adrian Seltzer. I have one question. The magisterial districts that the county had a problem with, were they the old lines or the new lines?
Ms. Seltzer, if you would finish your questions, and then we'll answer them as well.
That was it. Were they the old magisterial district lines that they were concerned with, or the new magisterial district lines that haven't been approved yet?
That's the end of your questions? Okay. Do you care to answer?
The county official indicated the new magisterial district lines were approved at the very end of December.
Okay. So, are there any other public comment on this? Is there anyone?
Jamie Vogel is
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Mogul, I didn't see you. Please go ahead.
Okay, Jamie Mogul, Haverford. I did mean to update you all, particularly, I think I spoke with Vice President Gavin, but I meant to contact you all, that I have been is actually incorrect. I mean, the fact that they actually said that they rejected our maps because you corrected something, that actually defies common sense, actually. And also the magisterial district, I think many of you have heard me say this before, that is not, magisterial district lines are drawn by caseload. And those are the new maps. I know Adrian just spoke. Those are the new maps. They were adopted, and it does remove one of the districts in our area. But those are done by case law and has nothing to do with wards or population. And you all did do the correct thing. So my only comment to you all is, before you withdraw an ordinance, I would, it's because it's not put into effect. I am actually working so that it does get done. There's only really about 700 voters difference in terms of the precincts. And it's a great map, and I'm very grateful that you did that. So I don't know how that works with semantics, but there is a lot on the table that this could still work. I just hadn't said anything to you all because it wouldn't impact next election. It wouldn't go into effect till 2024.
Thank you, Mogul. Is there anyone else with any other public comment online?
No.
Okay. Would anyone care to respond to any of the public comment? Oh, President Sinai, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. I just wanted to respond to Ms. Mogul and first say on behalf of the board who worked really hard on this, thanks for the kind words about the map. But second, I think there's a pragmatic reason not to, at this point, get this map passed right away. And the reason for withdrawing it, which is that, you know, for the wards, the effect of the wards is on a 2-year cycle, right? So it's not until really the 2025 elections that would matter. But if the wards change before the 2024 election, it will change where people vote for that election. So given that, you probably want to repass it if we can pass this map to take an effect for the 2025 cycle. So we don't have this weird kind of mid-year off cycle, just change in polling place without it affecting who you're voting for. So that was it. Thank you, Commissioner Grimes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Courtney, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just have a question. If we disagree with the county's assessment around the magisterial district lines, does rescinding this ordinance prevent us from suggesting this map again, or suggesting a map that does conflict with their lines?
Not at all, Commissioner. We can go back, if we can convince the county of our position, we can go back with the exact same map if they in the Department of State will allow it.
Great.
Thank you. Any other commissioner questions, comments? Seeing none. Okay, I will call the vote on this. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Anyone voting nay? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none. Passes. Thank you very much. The next matter is considering a resolution authorizing staff to submit a Montco 2040 implementation grant application to fund capital purchases for bike share in the City Avenue District. Since this is something somewhat novel, I'm going to see if Ms. Dirks would like to give us a brief synopsis of the matter.
Thank you. Staff has submitted an application for a Montco 2040 grant. There is a 20% match for that grant. The funds would be used for the purchase of capital for equipment to allow for an expansion of Indigo into the City Avenue District.
Okay.
And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any commissioner questions, comments on this? Commissioner Zeloff, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. Jillian, the memo is very thorough, thank you. It asks the question or indicates that there's an issue to be resolved, which is who's in charge, right? Who's taking management responsibility if the grant is received and the bikes and the stations are purchased. And so I want to offer that my view is that the City Avenue Special Services District should be in charge of maintenance of both the stations and the bikes and the entire program.
Yes.
Is that the thinking of the staff?
Yes. We are aligned in that, and City Avenue District's excited and enthusiastic to be a partner in this and to work alongside Indigo for the management.
Good, I'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McComb, please.
Commissioner Grimes, thank you. Just like to urge support for this. I've been in touch with Brian Fenstermaker of the City Avenue Special Services District. This is a great return on our investment. It's a minimal amount of money. It promotes all the things we're trying to do in the township in terms of sustainability, better bikeability, the comprehensive plan. So this is a really easy decision, and I would urge us to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to, questions, comments? Before we go to public comment, Commissioner McComb, given your support, would you care to make a motion?
Sure. I would move we consider for recommendation of the Board of Commissioners adoption of a resolution supporting the request for grant funds from Montgomery County's Montco 2040 program to fund capital purchases to support the expansion of the Indigo Bike Share program into the City Avenue District, and agreeing that the township, along with City Avenue Special Services District, will match funds towards the grant. Do I have a second? Thank you,
Commissioner Kramer. Okay, great. Thank you. Seconded. Thank you very much. Okay. We've heard from the commissioners. Is there any public comment on this matter? Please, if you can come up to the other podium.
Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Cohen. I'm actually a Philadelphia resident now, but I grew up in Wynwood, a Lower Merion alum, and I own Bicycle Transit Systems that operates Indigo. So it's awesome to see it coming together here in a hometown, excited for the support for it. And I would just encourage, as someone who biked to school from Wynwood over to LM, and my father still lives here, I would encourage the continued support of the infrastructure, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, that will support use of this bike share system, because we, along with the township and City Avenue Bid, hope that this is a pilot. We want it to get further west to this area, to Ardmore, so that people can ride bikes to SEPTA, go to the city, go over to Manayunk, and have this network. So I'd hope that this is the beginning of, it's not the beginning. You guys have been doing great work. I go down Wynwood Road now, near where my father lives, and I'm amazed what you've done on Wynwood Road. So I hope that you continue with the push to make the township more pedestrian and bike friendly for children, for families, for bikers, for everyone. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to offer public comment? Mr. Gordon.
I couldn't resist. Hi, Brian Gordon, Marion Station. Just a few quick comments about this. The first is, this is really exciting, and I'm thinking about the interplay between the bikes and the Kinwood Trail and how much fun that could be in having bikes at either end for rental. The second thing is I wanted to encourage you to continue to impose recreational trails, rec trails in every development, and make sure they're connected together. And finally, I think there was a bike study done around 2005, even before I arrived. If it's still on the shelf, take another look at it and see if we can, I'm talking about bikeable route study and back roads. It'd be great to implement that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with public comment? Is there anyone online on this? No. I know. Thank you. So we do have a written comment that has been provided to all the commissioners from Janet Giuliani, who is the managing director of Bala Plaza. Ms. Giuliani wrote in support of this resolution to submit the grant application. So, and we thank her for submitting that. Unless there's anything else, I'll call for the vote on this. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Next, we're on item 7 on the agenda, which is on page 33. This concerns an authorization to advertise an ordinance for Chapter 155, our zoning ordinance for the light industrial district for signage in that district. So I see Jillian here. If you would like to make a few comments, you're certainly welcome to.
Yes, I'm happy to walk you through the ordinance if anyone has additional questions, but I can be brief and explain that the signage, the code amendment that is proposed is to create district-specific standards for the LI district. The LI district is a district that exists in Bala-Cynwyd. It's located at the terminus of Writers Ferry Road. It includes 5 properties. The 2 things the code amendment seeks to achieve, one is to address a requirement for, currently our signs are, the sign area for each property is calculated by street frontage. One of the unique things about the zoning district is there is no street frontage or limited street frontage to generate permitted sign area. And the other thing is that this district allows for 10-story buildings, and there are not sign provisions for taller buildings, considering the scale. So those are the 2 things that we're trying to achieve with these changes. There is one change that we wanted to read in tonight. You have a copy in front of you, but it is to D9 or D5. It's the addition of the word non-residential to further clarify that these provisions would only be applicable to non-residential buildings. We also have images of building signage scale to provide some representation of what that size looks like on a building of a specific height. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so let me start by just asking you to clarify 2 things, because I've gotten asked about this from quite a few residents in my ward. Can you confirm that this ordinance will not allow additional billboards in this district?
Yes, I can confirm that.
Okay. And is it also the case that this will not allow any other non-accessory signs, meaning signs unrelated to the building that they're on?
That is correct.
So those will not be allowed in here?
No.
Okay. And the last thing is the LI district. Could you just describe where we're talking about in case someone's not familiar?
Sure, and I'm happy to share a map on the screen. The LI district, here we go. It's comprised of 5 properties. Some of them are under joint ownership. I think there is 5 different addresses there, but it includes the Royal Athena property, Pencoy Landing, where there is a Marriott Hotel, Aqua Hab, which is located at 605 Writers Ferry, and also the Harmland Building, which is located at 525 Writers Ferry Road. This right here is 76.
Okay. And this is the only area in the township?
This is the only area in the township that is zoned LI.
Thank you. Okay. Other commissioner questions, comments? Commissioner McKeon.
Thank you. So, Jillian, my questions relate back to the size of the signage. I know there was an issue raised at the Planning Commission
Yeah.
because at least one planning commissioner, I think, felt that the sides, we were permitting signs to be too large. And my concerns are, you mentioned the expressway. Right now, we're dealing with developers who want to put in one or maybe multiple electronic billboards already on the expressway. So I'd like to limit the additional signage as much as possible. So what I'm wondering is how staff would feel if we changed that number from 100 feet to the maximum area of the sign being 80 feet. And now if the developer wanted to get a sign over 80 feet, I think he or she could still go before the zoning hearing board, request a variance, and that would give the public an opportunity too for feedback, and they could say whether or not they oppose it. But is that something, is an 80-foot maximum something that staff could live with?
It is not something we have looked at, the signs that we had looked at previously, so we do have some examples. This is a 90 square foot. And then also currently, wall signs are limited to 40 feet, so this kind of illustrates what a 40-foot sign would look like. I do think that we could have a discussion about it. It seems reasonable. I do think...
The signage, just to be clear for tonight, the signage that's being proposed is really just, has to relate to the building itself. It can't become a de facto billboard. I know there's been some concern in the community about that the signage should be too large. The signage standards that are being brought forward tonight are designed to be proportioned to the building and the height of the building. Most of our buildings in our commercial areas and our signage is really oriented to that pedestrian scale commercial areas that you have in Ardmore, Bryn Mawr, where signs related 3 stories, 4 stories, where we don't allow a lot of height. The only other place in the township where height is permitted above 5 stories is City Avenue. And City Avenue allows larger signs. And what we're really doing here is aligning this district with those same standards. If you have a taller building, what works there. So we haven't, to Jillian's point, we haven't done that analysis, but we do have some graphics tonight, and I think the owner of the Pencoy Landing is here tonight to show the proportion of how those signs would work. And I think that's how the standards are really developed. Just as, are they proportional? Can they be seen from where you're trying to see them?
Okay, thank you. What I'd like to do is make an amendment. I don't know if it'd be a friendly amendment.
We haven't put a motion
There's a
out.
motion yet. Well,
So
if there's a motion.
You could actually make a motion if you'd care to, and then amend, with an amendment. Or I'll make a motion and you can.
I mean, I don't want to belabor it, but I would read this and then just.
However you
Why
want
don't
to
you
do
make
it.
the, I don't want to drag it out too.
All right, I will, and just as a reminder, we're just advertising this tonight also, although you're certainly welcome to do that. So I am going to move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise a public hearing and notice of intention to adopt an ordinance to amend the Code of Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 155, entitled Zoning, Article 9, Sign Standards, to add regulations for district-specific signage in the Light Industrial District. Now, yes, Commissioner McKeon.
All right, so I'd like to second
Okay.
that and
Yes,
then make
thank
a
you.
motion to amend the, this is section D5A, maximum area of sign. It's 100 square feet. I'd like to amend it to 80 square feet.
So that's 5A.
D5A.
Okay, 80 square feet. Okay, I'll consider that a friendly amendment for purposes of discussion.
I'd like to comment on the.
Well, please, we just have the motion on
Right.
the table seconded. Do you have anything else you wanted to say?
Nothing to add.
I understand Commissioner McKeon's suggestion. I disagree with it, though. This is an unusual area, and there have been complaints by people in terms of, first of all, it's dark. There are no streets per se, so the signs are not really in relation to street addresses. The signs really need to be big, or they're kind of useless. So I think staff has looked at it. I think the signage that they're proposing is the appropriate size. It helps people navigate. It helps people see what's there. Pencoy Landing's a terrific place, but there have been issues with trying to find the landing, the Lark, what is the restaurant, where is the hotel. So anything that makes it easier for people to navigate through there is good. There are no residents, nobody really can complain about it, and it's clear it's not going to be a billboard expansion of sorts. And it has nothing to do with residential units, which would be the Royal Athena, which has already been subject to consideration, and you know, the Royal Athena has not been granted permission to have an oversized sign. So I think as drafted, this is the appropriate legislation. I would suggest this is the way we should proceed.
Well, all right, let me just say, Commissioner Kramer, I'm going to recognize you. I have a question, I guess, would be on Commissioner McComb's point, but I'm going to let Commissioner Kramer go first.
I agree with Commissioner McComb. This issue has come before the neighborhood club, and there's been a great deal of discussion about this you know, not recently, but some time ago this came before us. And I think I agree with Commissioner McComb that this is the correct size, and it's carefully thought out and meets the needs of the business owners at that location. And arbitrarily changing the size of it, I don't think is appropriate.
Thank you. So before I go, any other commissioners' questions come? Oh, President Sinai, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chris and Jillian. Though I share Commissioner McComb and Kramer's general view that the size of the on building top of the building signage is seems appropriate and in scale with the buildings and for the purpose that they seem to be intended, which is when you see buildings that they have signage that reflect the tenants in the building or in this case that the example the hotel. Chris, I guess my concern is if like some other building shows up and they say, oh, well, what we want to do is put a really bright, multicolored, moving, display as our sign up on the sixth floor that will advertise the businesses that are in this building. Like, what prevents that?
So I'm happy to answer it, and Chris can jump in.
I can't see who's at the podium, so I'm addressing.
So there are limitations that are included in the code amendment. 5E limits the types of illumination, and any kind of electronic messaging would not be permitted. So it just allows for illumination, limits it to external illumination lit from above or internal illumination, so lit from within.
And does it have to look like the sign that we saw in the hotel that that was shown to us in the example, or could it be something that basically looks like a billboard but is a 100-foot sign? All right. So are there designs here? Like some places we only allow channel lit signs and things like that. So
yes. So in addition to these regulations, they're also subject to the Article 9 regulations.
And those would provide some limitations, and they're consistent throughout the township. So those are the same restrictions that are placed on buildings in Ardmore, Bryn Mawr. Okay. So thanks. So that gives me comfort on that. So I guess the other thing I have a question about is the signs on poles, right? Mm-hmm. Which this ordinance also expands. And so that to me feels much more like a billboard for the building, even though it has to be for the occupant of the building. It feels like a billboard, right? The sign on the poles look like that. That is not something that is particularly tied to the scale of the building. And so that got expanded in size. It went from 40 square feet to 50 square feet. What was the rationale for that?
So the thought process there was that it would be consistent with the other district specific signage similar to, and so this is the same language that's used in City Avenue District.
Got it, but it was 40 feet here before, I guess, which is specific to this area. If there's not an immediate and pressing need to increase that size other than, consistency with, some miles away in the township, maybe we could leave that at 40 feet. Is that just, do you have views on that?
I don't think we have views on that, but just to be clear with the pole sign, so there's not a misunderstanding. Commercial properties are permitted one pole sign for their property. The square footage that's proposed is to go from 40 feet to 50 feet. That's the sign area. poles are only allowed to be a maximum of 15 feet tall. So that fear of this could be a billboard, an extended pole up and, extending over the expressway, I think isn't a concern. And the copy height is also limited on these signs to 18 inches, which I'm holding my hands up for everybody here, which is about 18 inches. And the further you get away, that's harder to read as the copy goes. But I think from that 40 to 50, I don't think we really have much of an opinion on that either way.
Okay, and that was just an aesthetic, or that was just a code consistency kind of element.
Yeah,
and
I
that
think-
pole has to be in the ground. It can't be a pole mounted on top of the building, right?
Yes, that pole would have to be in the ground. I think one of the other considerations that we discussed is the visibility from across, and I think I have an image here that shows the ice cream shop that is part of Pencoed Landing, but the visibility from the other side of the river. So, understanding that this is not something you're going to be seeing maybe right in front of you, but you may also want to be seeing from the pedestrian bridge as you cross the Schuylkill or as you're on the Main Street in Manayunk walking across the bridge.
Got it. Okay, that's very helpful, Jillian and Chris. Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you. Ask a question in furtherance of what Commissioner McComb said. So my understanding is that this would allow a building to have a sign, let's say potentially on the side facing the Schuylkill.
Yes.
And also on the side facing the Schuylkill River.
Yeah, correct.
And I certainly understand the need to have a larger sign facing the Schuylkill because you got a hotel, you got a restaurant. There's other, the Royal, forgive me, I know the Royal Athena is called something else now. It's escaping me. But on the other side, there's no access, as I understand, no vehicular access from the Main Street Manayunk side. Because the Pencoed Bridge, you have to be a tenant. If I'm correct, you have to be a tenant to use that bridge or else go into the leasing office or else you can't use it. So there would seem to be less of a need for as large a sign there because there's no access from that side. And also because of the trail, a larger sign detracts from the trail, from the sort of the natural, and I'm not going to call it a fully natural environment there, but it certainly is a certain ambiance. So while as I understand the concern from the expressway side, I think I agree with Commissioner McKeon as far as the river side of it. So I don't that as large a sign is not needed and in fact would detract. So I guess the question is, does the ordinance as it's been proposed, it's the same size for both sides, correct?
Yes. It
and
is.
you could have a sign on each side.
Yes, and I guess one piece of information I would like to add is we started at 150 for the sign area. City Avenue District allows for 200 square feet. We started at 150. We had been working with the county reviewing this, and then we changed it from 150 to 125. The Planning Commission then made a recommendation to reduce it to 100. So that's really where we got. It wasn't as though we had presented 100 and considered to reduce it.
Although to be clear, what's allowed there now?
Right now, it's limited to 40 square feet for a wall sign.
so-
That's the general standard, which is applicable to Bryn Mawr and also Ardmore.
Right, so we really didn't start. We started
Oh,
at
yeah,
less.
sorry, yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Well, I'm going to see how it goes. So any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Because I'd like to hear from, I assume it's going to be the owner of the property. I see none right now. So let's go to public comment. Sir, go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. Sean McCloskey from the Penn Group of Companies. So our company is the company that developed Pencoed Landing. We started there in 1999. We bought that first property. And at this point, we own most of the district. So it's a very unique district. It is sandwiched between the Schuylkill Expressway and the Schuylkill River. It's only a couple hundred feet wide. And the district itself is 70 feet below the Schuylkill Expressway. This is a site that's hiding in plain sight. There's 500,000 cars a day go within a mile of this property. And yet nobody really knows we're there. This was fine from 1999 until a few years ago when it was just our office and a health club. But at this point, we've opened public-facing businesses. We have a hotel that's open and accepting guests from around the world. We have a quite renowned restaurant up on the 7th floor called Lark. We have the Landing Kitchen. And yet, every day at my office, I hear from people that remark, well, what is this? And where was this? And how long has this been here? People think this site is part of Manayunk, or they think that it's on an island. They don't understand it's in Lower Merion. They don't know where it is. We've been operating for the last 2 years with essentially no signage, because we were originally going to do, as suggested, go for variance. But we met with the Neighborhood Club of Bala-Cynwyd, and the Neighborhood Club of Bala-Cynwyd didn't want to support any variances, and so we decided there was no real point in going for variance and taking on public fight. So we've requested this, we've requested staff to look at this issue. We have provided rendered drawings, which I have if you'd like to see them, to show you how unbelievably reasonable the signage request we're making is. We're talking about signage that cumulatively is about 1% of the facade area of this building. This very, very large building. This building is 90 feet tall, it's 250 feet wide, 125,000 square feet. The businesses, Lark Restaurant, the Landing Kitchen, Marriott Hotel, our office. There's a lot there. The specific ordinance drafted by staff limits the signage to only a building over 6 stories tall that's non-residential. This means we're not talking about signage for the health club. We are not talking about signage for the Royal Athena. We are literally talking about signage for the only building in the district that would meet those criteria. The open land that is left in that district is owned by us. So we're not talking about another developer that's going to show up with colored signs or neon. We've been building a very tasteful project there. We've been working on it for 24 years. Here's our challenge. People are coming to the hotel from around the world, but people in the area don't even know we're there. They cannot find us.
Sir, can I just interrupt you for a second? Just to be clear, since we're on a motion to advertise the ordinance tonight, and because you're in public comment, you're not an applicant, we generally like people to keep it to
That's
just a
fine.
few
I'm
minutes.
happy
So
to keep it short.
I would just ask you to just, if you want to show us, I'll indulge you with a little extra time if you want to show us your diagrams, but if you could be as brief as possible.
Sure, up to you if you would like to see the diagrams. They're very modest signage.
Right.
I would say this ordinance amendment provides a very modest amount of signage for a large-scale building in a unique location, and that signage is needed. If you'd like to see the renderings, happy to show them.
If you'd like to do it quickly, sure.
Sure. Can I approach here?
Yeah, of course.
So, imagine you're going like 70 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour on a Schuylkill Expressway. You're going by the building. This building is 70 feet below grade. This building facade, you see the one that is, this one is here. This is the side, the bottom drawing here is the one you see from the expressway. It's labeled view from the cemetery, because the reality is the cemetery is our neighbor on the side. We don't have residential neighbors here. So these signs are all over 80 square feet. They're ranging from 90 square feet to 100 square feet. This is the 4 sides of the building. I don't think anyone could look at this and conclude that this is like oversized. To put it in perspective, a billboard is 500 square feet. Okay, so we're talking 100 feet, but we're 100 feet for a building that's down in a hole by a highway. So I know this is not our application. We're going to come back to that later, but I just did want to show you the scale. Because when you see text amendment, and you see it says 100 or 80 or 200, and 200 is a relevant number because that's what's permitted in City Avenue District, or the 125 that the Planning Commission requested we drop to 100. This is what 100 looks like. It's not much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Okay, so is there anyone else who would like to offer public comment on this matter? Please, Ms. Gillen.
Maura Gillen, Haverford. I would encourage you to advertise that ordinance as originally drafted. You all know how much of our revenue comes from businesses, and we need to support them, especially in this interesting little LI area. And as one of my professors in my MBA course used to say, a business without a sign is a sign of no business.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any other public comment on this? Is there anyone online with comment? Okay. So let me add, we did receive one written comment on this. David Rosenbaum from Bala-Cynwyd sent an email to the board in opposition to the proposed code amendment relating to this district. So if there's no other public comment, I'm sorry, you said you're sticking with?
Yeah, I was going to stick with the motion.
Okay, so what we have now to vote on, we have the resolution, the motion that was made with Commissioner McKeon's amendment to 80 feet. So that's the first thing we're going to vote on. To be clear, because I probably wasn't when I made the motion, the motion is with the amendment to section D5 that staff proposed tonight. So just clear on what that's what we got on the extra sheet.
I'd like to make an amendment to that, or propose an amendment.
Please.
Move for an amendment, whatever, for D5A, just changing the 80 square feet back to 100 square feet.
Well, that's going back. So what I'm suggesting is we're going to, Commissioner.
Making an amendment.
Yes.
I think,
Well,
as a point of order, if I may, you vote on what's currently on the
Yes.
floor.
Okay.
If it's rejected,
Yes.
then you go back to the original.
Wait, can I interject? No, it wouldn't. It would be, we have a motion on the floor and he's making a
Make an
motion to
amendment.
amend that original motion, so his motion would be voted on first.
Okay,
Thank you.
although let's
accepted.
take the path of least resistance. Yes, please.
The motion was made to adopt, according to the staff presentation. An offer was made of an amendment to reduce it to 80 square feet. You accepted that as friendly.
I did.
Which means the only action you have to vote on right now is the motion as amended to the 80 square feet.
Okay,
Now,
Can I amend?
let's say no more. Let's just take
Commissioner
the,
Gavin can offer an amendment to actually be voted on to change it again. But the only thing you have right now is one motion that's been amended by friendly amendments.
so to move on. Commissioner Gavin, you've made your motion. Because I'm in the interest of moving this on. It's now been seconded. So now, did you want something you want to say?
Yeah, just very briefly, the reason I made the motion originally was because this is a type of process I think that should have to go through the zoning hearing board. And as we heard the applicant say, there was opposition in Bala-Cynwyd to the increased signage, and the way to get around meeting with the neighbors, meeting with the residents, meeting with the people in Bala-Cynwyd to get the larger sign is to simply change the zoning as opposed to going through the zoning hearing board to try to get a variance. And there's already a sign out there, and I don't see that, I think that this, as 100 feet is excessive. That's why I pushed for 80 feet. I'm not saying no sign, there's already a sign. A lot of people know where it is. I pushed for 80.
Okay. So, the amendment is on the table. It's been seconded. Thank you for your comments, by the way. So we are now voting, so everybody's clear, we are now voting on the motion that as amended by Commissioner McKeon, and we're voting on Commissioner Vice President Gavrin's amendment to put the 80 feet back up to 100 square feet. So if everyone's clear. All those in favor of Commissioner Gavrin's amendment, please raise your hand signifying aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I see 9 in favor.
And 10.
I see 9. I got Todd.
Okay.
So I see 9 in favor. All those opposed? I see 2 opposed. Any abstentions? So the motion to amend carries. So we are now voting, let's vote on the main motion as it exists now, which is essentially what we got when we started this evening with the staff amendment. Everyone's clear on that. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. So we're finished with that. Thank you very much, and thank you, sir, for your comments before. The next item, item 8 on the agenda, on page 40, and I am going to move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise a public hearing and notice of intent to adopt an ordinance to amend the Code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter A180, Historic Resource Inventory, to add 1533, 1539, 1601, and 1611 Monk Road to the Historic Resource Inventory as a Class 1 resource. Is there a second? Thank you, Vice President Gabbard. By way of Greg is here, but since this is in my ward, and in some ways I've been living with this project, for better or worse, and I assure the owner I'm not living in the project. This is the Linden Hill estate that's been with us many times before. One of the conditions of approval when we agreed to the plans, the condition of approval we adopted was that when the property was subdivided, that each subdivided parcel would be designated a Class 1 historic resource, just as the entire estate is a Class 1 resource before subdivision. So this is we have to redesignate, since the property was subdivided. We need to redesignate each of these parcels is individually as a Class 1 historic resource, which, as we all know, is our highest category and highest protection for this property, and is the best way to make sure that this property as an entirety is preserved as a Class 1 resource. So, since you're up here, Greg, is there anything else you would like to add?
I have plenty of slides, but I think it might be best if I addressed any questions that commissioners have.
So, are there any commissioners with questions or comments on this matter? I see none. Is there any public comment on this matter? Please, Ms. Gillen.
Can I ask first that, Maura Gillen, Haverford, that you spend the next 3 minutes just listening? Please don't spend my time preparing your counter to what you think I've said. Just listen and give me credit for doing my research, but also respect that I'm not going to be able to cover all the details of my research in 3 minutes. In most cases, when I appear before you, I'm asking for your consideration, asking you to more thoroughly consider an agenda item before you. This agenda item is designed to add properties to the Historic Resource Inventory, or HRI, but there is no authority in our township code to designate a property as an individual historic resource on the inventory. We can only designate resources defined as buildings, sites, structures, or objects, or complexes of the same. Historic resources are recognized at the federal, state, and local levels as located on properties. The means for locating them is the address. Please read Chapter A180 of our code. Pennsylvania statute, Title 37, also defines a historic resource as a building, structure, object, district, place, site, or area significant in our history. Don't get excited about place, site, or area. It doesn't apply here. Title 37 actually uses the term area in their definition of site, and they offer clear guidance on surveying potential sites and applying for historic markers. When you think of a site, think of, as a historic resource, think of a place with a historic marker, a specific place of a specific historic event. Staff is saying that a potential resource may be added to the HRI based on criteria at section 8818 of our code. Did any of you follow that link? 8818 specifically says, a building, structure, object, or site, or complex of the same may be placed on the historic resource and qualify for Class 2 or Class 1 based on this criteria. That last portion obviously is a paraphrase. Placement on our HRI is limited to buildings, sites, structures, objects, or complexes of the same. And let's not get excited about complex, because that has limited application here. According to Pennsylvania guidance to certified local governments like Lower Merion, the designation of an entire estate or farm should be done as a district and not as an individual historic resource. The Linden Hill estate is not a Class 1 resource on our inventory. The Griscom House is a Class 1 resource. It's also a contributing resource to the Mill Creek Historic District listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The subdivided properties in question tonight already lie within that historic district and therefore within our Historic Resource Overlay District. There's no change in zoning here. Future buildings, structures, or objects located there will be non-contributing. New development may be considered in relation to the Griscom House, but that review is limited to the minimum essential setting or context in which an identified historic resource retains its historic integrity. You have the authority to preserve the immediate setting or context of an individually designated historic resource so that it can be appreciated. You do not have the authority for expansive review to limit property owner rights regarding other building sites, structures, or objects located on those properties or nearby. I have some suggestions that I can share if you're interested, but other than the currently designated Griscom House, which could be strengthened to include the entire complex, the possible designation of the sanitarium site after a proper survey is completed, there are no other building sites, structures, or objects eligible for individual designation as historic resources on those lots. Property owners have rights and government has limits. Please read our code, read the statutes of the Commonwealth, stop using historic preservation to achieve other objectives. And if I'm wrong, if I've missed something in my research, please point me in the direction of the right code or statute that tells me what authority you do have in addition to what I believe I've read. But let's not talk about what's been done in the past. Bad habits do not make legal authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to offer public comment? I see none. Is there anyone online?
There is none.
Okay, so I'd like to respond to Ms. Gillen, but Greg, if you would like to respond, you're certainly welcome to do it.
Well, I would note that we have done extensive research into this question of whether land without buildings can be designated as historic resources according to our code. The subdivision of this property will result in, or has resulted in, 3 lots that contain no historic structures, so no structures relating to the existing estate, the historic estate from 1929. And I'll share some slides, and this might seem technical, but I will make it very brief, I promise. So again, as Ms. Gillen noted, the definition of historic resource does include sites as well as buildings, structures, and objects. The last line also states, unless otherwise specified, the boundaries of a historic resource, and this is the previous definition, which read district. It was amended a little while ago to resource, are that of the parcel, which must contain at least one contributing element and may contain non-contributing elements. In the case of those 3 lots without structures, the Historical Commission determined that the site and the context of the site as it pertains to the overall former estate is the contributing element to those properties. Now, there is also a definition for the term historic site in our zoning code, and I'll just read the last portion, which refers to the examples of historic sites, which include but are not limited to those listed under the term site in the current version of a National Park Service bulletin, which has a section entitled How to Define Categories of Historic Properties. And this is the verbatim definition from the code. So going to that National Register bulletin, there are lists of the examples of types of sites that can be designated under their guidelines. Designed landscape happens to be one of them. And in addition, the bulletin reads that a site can possess associative significance or information or potential or both. The associative significance of those properties is of the estate, the former estate as a whole, which the Historical Commission believes is important to protect as it pertains to the view sheds, as any new construction might have an impact on the historic buildings. And so I'd be happy to take any further questions on this.
Okay, so thank you very much. So let me just add some context, and let me just say first to Ms. Gillen, I hear you, I think, and I hope what we've shown is that we've taken your comments, which we've heard previously, seriously. I think that we have a respectful disagreement, But I am satisfied that we've consulted our sources, including our solicitor, and are going about this in the way that has been deemed appropriate. The other thing is that I would remind my fellow commissioners and the public that this is one piece in front of us tonight of an agreement that we reached with the owner of the property in order so his development could go forward in the way that he proposed it. And I'm sure many of you will remember, because we dealt with this about a year ago now, that there was concern over preserving this estate while the owner wanted to subdivide it so he could put 3 new houses on the property and put some additional residents in the existing property. And there was concern about preserving the totality of the estate's historic significance. And the agreement that we reached, not just with the owner but also with the residents, was to redesignate the subdivided parcels, and the owner was supportive of that, and we put it in the conditions of approval that this board approved with his consent and with his approval. So that's the way we did it. I agree with Greg that the value of this estate is not just the buildings, it's the landscape. We talked a year ago about historic view sheds, which will continue to be present in this property even after the new houses are developed on it. And this is an important step to preserving that estate and the Class 1 resource for not just for the people who live there, but also for the community. So, and by the way, and the Historical Commission obviously found the Secretary of the Interior standards that are requisite for each parcel to be found to have Class 1 value.
That the criteria in our code comply with each of the lots individually.
Yes. And Greg, I think, will be happy to share with anyone who wants to see it at any time what the individual parcels' values are, because it's in a narrative. So, are there any other questions, comments? I see none. So we will take the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Do you mind if this goes on consent calendar, Commissioner Zella?
I do not.
You don't?
I do not mind.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Greg. So that concludes Vice President Gavin, the business of building and planning.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. Our next meeting is the Police Committee meeting, which will be chaired by Commissioner McComb. But before I turn it over to him, just 2 quick announcements. One, I failed to mention before or acknowledge President Sinai, who's here on Zoom. This is not a coup attempt, me sitting in his seat. I'm merely keeping it warm because it is difficult to chair a meeting on Zoom. 2, as I mentioned before, any members of the public that wish to speak about the disciplinary action agenda item, please do so during this committee meeting rather than later during public comment at the Board of Commissioners meeting. Again, you'll be making comment from the podium over there if you're there in person. If you're online, please raise your virtual hand. We'll start with those in person. And don't forget to introduce yourself at the beginning of your comments. With that, you guys have been here and been patient long enough, so I will turn it over to Commissioner McComb.
Thank you, Vice President Gavin. Just in addition to what Vice President Gavin said, that all 3 items on this agenda will be referred to the Board of Commissioners for action during tonight's special Board of Commissioners meeting. So with that, we'll hear from Superintendent McGrath with a note that we may take this out of order as it's listed on the agenda, and I think we were going to move the disciplinary action to item 3 with your approval, Superintendent, and do the conditional offer of employment and the police promotions first.
Okay, the first action you note is a conditional offer of employment authorizing the township manager to provide for 3 individuals currently going through background investigations. Those conditional offers, thorough background investigations have been conducted. 11 qualified candidates remain on the current certified list. This will allow us to make those hires in early May of this year. The remaining people will be continuing to go through the process for potential hiring for the next academy class, which is in July of this year. There are currently 11 vacant positions in the police department, and as I said, this will fill 3 of those. So this is requesting your authorization for those, the manager to make those offers.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. Are there any commissioner comments or questions? Seeing none, are there any questions or comment from the public in the room? Jody, anybody online?
No.
With that, I'll make a motion. We consider for recommendation of the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Manager to make conditional offers of employment to 3 police applicants who fulfill the civil service requirements for eligibility. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. With that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying yes. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that passes unanimously. And the second item has to do with possible authorization of police promotions. Superintendent?
Yes, so Lieutenant John String, currently with the Police Department, has accepted an offer to become the Chief of Police in Narberth Borough. This will open one position at the rank of Lieutenant in the Police Department, and if that vacancy is filled, it will then cause an opening at the rank of Sergeant. We are making a recommendation to 2 officers currently certified by Civil Service for promotion, the first being Sean Clifford, who is a sergeant, to the rank of lieutenant. Briefly, his background. Sean joined the department in 2002. He attained the rank of sergeant in 2018. He's performed extremely well, exceeds expectations in 4 of his 5 last annual evaluations. He's attended numerous advanced police training and leadership courses. Sean possesses a strong work ethic. Is very current on current case law, has the skills and ability to handle many different tasks at the same time with minimal supervision, and makes very sound judgments. He's got 2 unit accommodations, superintendent's letter, and an outside agency accommodation, and has received 23 letters of appreciation from the public. Ron Eckert, recommended to the rank of sergeant, started with the department in 2012. He's in the patrol division. He's also been assigned to the bicycle unit and the investigations unit during his career. He's a member of the emergency response team since 2015. He has advanced training in crash investigations, leadership, and has also exceeds expectation in his last 5 evaluations. He's got a combination for merit and a unit accommodation, and like Sean, has 23 letters of appreciation from the public. He was also nominated as Officer of the Quarter in 2015 and 19. And we are making the recommendation that both of those officers be promoted to those ranks.
Thank you, Superintendent. Both officers seem eminently well qualified. Are there any commissioner comments or questions on either one of these potential promotions? Anybody in the room have any public comment with respect to these promotions? Jody, do we have anybody online? Okay, so I would move that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the promotion of Sergeant Sean Clifford to the rank of Lieutenant and Officer Ronald Eckert to the rank of Sergeant from the list of candidates certified by the Civil Service Commission become effective March 13th, 2023 as recommended by the Superintendent of Police. Do I have a second? Thank you. Commissioner Zeloff, call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying yes. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, that passes unanimously. That brings us to our third and final item, which is an authorization of disciplinary action, and I'll ask the superintendent to make a motion on that. I'm going to note, as I did at our prior hearing, this has to do with the event that took place on January 8th, 2023. 2 preliminary comments. One is, as a matter of long-standing policy, we don't comment on human resource issues in public. Second, we've received notification of a possible lawsuit against the township and/or the officer with respect to the events, and that is on the advice of our outside counsel is that we be very limited in what we say publicly because it's a matter that's going to be pending in litigation. But with that, we'll hear from the superintendent with respect to his recommendation.
As you know, this is a result of the investigation of the January incident. In evaluation of that incident, we determined that there are violations of policies related to pursuit, the use of body-worn cameras, as well as issues related to poor safety and tactics. Based on that, we recommend a 1-day, 8-hour suspension.
Okay. Do we have any commissioner comments or questions for the superintendent? Do we have any public comment on that?
Good evening. Brian Reese-Turner, President of the Mainline NAACP. Based on what I just heard, it's unacceptable. On January 8th, we all sat in this room a few weeks back. We watched the video. We saw what happened. We saw what transpired during that situation. And the conditions that were provided to us, and we saw that video, it was very emotionally draining to watch, to see that woman be victimized that particular way by a police officer. So we did draft a response that we did send to you all. It's my understanding that there was acknowledgement at the last Board of Commissioners meeting of that letter. But I want to remind you all that in regards to the recent traffic stop in Ballacunwood, it's wholly unacceptable. Furthermore, in my opinion, and in part the opinion of the NAACP Mainline branch, it's a pattern regarding how the Lower Merion Police Department interacts with citizens of color while conducting traffic stops. We would like to work...
Excuse me, could you speak up, please?
Sure, my apologies. It's a pattern regarding how the Lower Merion Police Department interacts with citizens of color while conducting traffic stops. We would like to work cooperatively with the Board of Commissioners to ensure that the culture of the Lower Merion Police Department ensures safety, the safety of Lower Merion residents, those who visit or pass through our community. This requires immediate and substantive action and accountability. To that end, the branch is calling for an outside investigation and independent review. What I just heard in terms of disciplinary matter for the situation, that's unacceptable. The gentleman who pulled the gun, who tased this woman, should be removed. They should be relieved of their duties. They are not a characteristic officer that should be representing the Lower Merion Police Department. There needs to be an immediate end to the police investigating themselves. They should not be the judge of their own conduct. We're calling for an outside investigation of this ballot incident. In addition, we're calling for an independent review commission to be set up to monitor future incidents and complaints related to the excessive use of force, harassment, and to facilitate the outside investigation as needed, and to make recommendations for punishment, because clearly the recommendations coming from the police are not suitable. This commission should also consist of citizens from the township. This commission should consist of at least 7 people, 3 of which should be from the Black and brown community, and at least 3 women. The outside investigation should be completed no later than December 31st, 2023. We recognize that setting up such an independent review commission will take some time, but we call on you to begin this process immediately and share monthly updates with the community. Ideally, the review commission would be ready to do its work by the end of 2023. The factual findings and recommendations of this commission for disciplining officers included should be made public. The police superintendent should follow the recommendations of this commission in disciplining officers involved in the use of force and in use of force cases, period, unless, for a particular reason, the police superintendent makes a separate factual finding and recommendations that justify another type of punishment. But 1 day is not appropriate to correct the damage that's been done. There has to be a restorative practice of the community related to this incident. We all watched that video, and it was traumatizing. And I'm sure it's a trigger response for people who have been victim of this type of thing before. It's important that the Board of Commissioners listen to this, the township manager listens to this. This behavior is unacceptable. There are going to be other people who speak in commentary to this, listing the concerns that we feel for this, but something has to be done that's more significant than a 1-day suspension. That makes no sense and it's not acceptable. That man should be removed from his job.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? And if you could identify yourself and where you live, record, please.
I'm Diana Robertson. I'm speaking on behalf of Power Mainline. And in response to the disciplinary action that was stated by Superintendent, I took a good deal of time, along with other members of Power Main Line, and we took a good deal of time, and we looked at the policies within the police department, specifically policies that dealt with a code of conduct. And noting that the staff and inspections unit commander is responsible for doing the investigative action for complaints filed in reference to police officers, and then reflecting on what took place on January the 8th. It says in the policies that the Staff and Inspections Unit Commander has the authority to report directly to the superintendent among criminal conduct, serious internal misconduct, or the improper use of a weapon or vehicle, unnecessary force, and I'll stop there, unnecessary force. So clearly the action that took place on January the 8th dealt with the use of force, the use of excessive force. The policies that are included in the standards of conduct on the use of force and excessive force are very, very broad. And because they're very, very broad, my question is going to be, how is it, what determination or what standard is used by the Staff and Inspections Unit Commander to make a determination as to what is considered out of order in terms of the use of force for a police officer if the standards are very broad? There are no very specific standards. So one of the recommendations needs to be that within the standards of conduct, within the policies, there needs to be very specific guidelines as to what is defined as use of force and what is defined as excessive use of force. Because without those standards, then how can it be determined what is out of order? And that's why we have a recommendation that doesn't make any sense. There's also in the standards of code, it talks about the action that should be taken in regard to misconduct of a police officer that would be something that would deter that action from taken again, that other police officers wouldn't commit that same offense again. When you give disciplinary action that really isn't disciplinary action, then you haven't done anything to deter that action from taking place again. You haven't done anything to say to the public that you're hearing information, that you're hearing them on what was viewed, what was considered traumatizing. There is no even explanation as to why that action took place at all. It was said at the last meeting that the officer did violate several policies, violated the de-escalation policies, violated a lot of other policies. So how do you have all of these violations of even the policies that you have in place, and you have no standard for the disciplinary action to deal with that? If you don't have disciplinary action that is adequate, it is guaranteed that it will happen again. I don't know whether this officer has had disciplinary action in the past, but what we do know is that when things take place, that there are no repercussions for the actions, they will occur again. This is something that needs to be deterred and needs to be placed in the policies very specifically as to how the use of force and use of excessive force is defined and considered by this police department. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. They're helpful. Anybody else with public comment?
Adrian Seltzer Winwood, speaking as Vice President of the Mainline NAACP Mainline Branch. going to read for the public the second demand made by the NAACP. And I'm going to state that it is a demand. Frederick Douglass said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand." That was termination and desk duty for officers involved in the Bala-Cynwyd traffic stop. We demand the termination of the officer involved in the stop who pulled a gun on the passenger, the officer who tased the unarmed driver, and Superintendent McGrath. In addition, we demand all other officers on the scene during the incident be placed on desk duty, pending the completion of extensive retraining on both de-escalation and how to intervene when a fellow officer is using excessive force. There needs to be transparency. Let me read that line again. There needs to be transparency regarding the officer's status, and the community should not fear that the officers are still responsible for responding to calls or making traffic stops. All officers on that day were complicit, and the superintendent needs to be held accountable for his officers' actions and their inactions. Thank you.
Crystal Blunt, 15 School Lane in Ardmore. I'm really trying to wrap my head around a one-day suspension for a woman who was tased in an incident. I went back and looked over the history of the police department in this community. 30 years ago, they stopped Reverend Davis, with guns drawn. 2015, there was a shoveling incident in Bala-Cynwyd with people of color. That same 2015, there were two people from the Overbrook Park area that the police had a run-in with. Harry Mobley had a police run-in with. Nathan Williams had a police run-in with. And now this young woman, underneath that man's tenure. You are a commission board who should govern everybody, not just your little pocket and community that you live in, but everybody. And that includes the Black and brown people that live in this community, that should be able to feel safe in their own community, that pay taxes just like everyone else in this community. And every time we come up here to place our concerns, we want to be met with an unbiased reaction from this commission's board, one that's fair and transparent. Because you're elected officials. You took an oath to govern everybody in this community, not just who you want to. I understand that most of you are white with the exception of one commissioner, so you look through a lens, possibly of white privilege, so you might not understand how traumatizing all of this is for a community of Black and brown people. That is unacceptable. That police officer should not be on the street because people aren't safe. He should not be here anymore. Underneath his tenure, this stuff happens. And they police themselves. They decide on what punishment they deserve. Do you know how that sounded? I really want you to think about that. 8 days, 1 day suspension. He could have cost that woman her life. You could have killed Harry Mobley when you had guns drawn. Someone is going to lose their life, and is that what you're waiting for? Because I said that the last time, and somebody got killed on the top of Ardmore Avenue. They lost their life because you didn't want to put crosswalks there or safe things for people to walk through. So now we're standing before you, and someone is going to get killed. Someone is not going to go home to their families, a mom, a dad, a sister, a brother, a child, because you won't govern what you need to govern. Ernie McNeely, you should be doing something about that. He sits underneath your leadership. And if you're saying it's okay, and he's saying it's okay, then every police officer underneath his leadership is going to think it's okay. And then we're not safe in our own communities. So is that the message that you want to send the black and brown people of the community? That we're not safe in our own community? Because you won't step up and do what's right for this community and send a clear message that that is not okay. Because I venture to think that if that was a superintendent over there of color and all of this happening underneath his tenure, he wouldn't have a job. You need to do what's right. We tell kids all the time to do what's right in school, and you need to do what's right. You need to set the example for the younger generation that is looking at you to do what is right.
Good evening, Brian Gordon. Brian Gordon, Marion Station, former Township Commissioner, 2006 to 2018. I'm going to ask you to do what we never did one time in the 12 years that I served as a Township Commissioner. I'm going to ask you to reject the recommendation of Superintendent McGrath for discipline of this officer so that it could be studied further, discussed, and a more appropriate discipline can be selected. I ask you to vote no. I also, that's not why I came here tonight. I came here to present two of the ideas of the NAACP, which I'm also a member, in order to avoid traffic stops, racially discriminatory traffic stops in the future, and to address issues of discipline. I can't never get over my nervousness in talking in this room. I apologize, my throat closes up, and suddenly I'm, but I just want to let you know. So I apologize for that, and let me go on. So the first recommendation was to follow the example set in Philadelphia a year ago, which I've sent you 2 articles about, which is to eliminate pretextual stops. This is not a foreign concept to Lower Merion's Police Department. Superintendent McGrath will tell you that they reduced the number of police stops years ago, in part to address poor race relations issues. There was a time when officers, there may not have been a quota, but it was something that was considered an advancement, and I think those days are gone. Nevertheless, I believe with many things, it's in with whether to stop is within the individual discretion of a police officer. What we're asking you to do is to make this more routine and to take a look at more minor stops that don't put the public safety at risk, and study those carefully and see if it's a policy that can be adopted. It's just one of maybe 10 ideas the NAACP had, and they wanted to narrow them to 3 to give you some achievable objectives. The third recommendation was to have an outside independent review. It could be to hire professional reviewers. It could be to have a panel of commissioners and a panel from the public serving as a review board to make recommendations for discipline that may be more appropriate. There is so much pressure on Superintendent McGrath in making his recommendation of punishment in this case. He's already been given a vote of no confidence by 130 or so officers. He's under enormous pressure to please that constituency and to address you in this constituency. I do not know how somebody can make an objective, rational decision when they're under that kind of pressure. It's not just Superintendent McGrath, it's any superintendent. You would get a better result in a narrow group of cases involving use of force where there are complaints about the use of force. if you had some kind of an independent panel to do the review. So I'll leave it at that. We don't have all the answers about how it would work, but our suggestion is the panel would make a recommendation, and then the police chief could override the recommendation if the police chief made a separate set of factual findings. The third thing I wanted to talk with you about is the ideas that were left on the table and ignored many years ago. In preparing to talk with you this evening, I found an email. I found the results of a meeting on November 8th, 2015. And it was at a time when we had a community outcry after the snow shovel incident. And we met as a group, commissioners and members of the public, in a very civil setting at Bethel AME Church in Bryn Mawr. And we had a wonderful discussion. And we had magic markers and whatever. We were recording people's comments. And I gathered all of the poster boards and went home and typed them up as best I could. And they ask you now to say, if we had, when you're choosing the next police officer, I understand Superintendent McGrath's time is coming to the end of his tenure. When you're choosing the next police chief, to consider, would we be in a better place in terms of race relations if we had taken these ideas seriously? And I'm just going to read down the list of ideas. Or would they even prevented the use of force, and by Superintendent McGrath's own acknowledgement, the failure of the officer to de-escalate the situation, as is our rules and part of his training. So the number one item in the recommendation, or that was voiced by the public, is officers need to be open to suggestions in a tense situation, especially where one cannot comply, and be willing to adapt to the situation. Number three, the public needs to clearly understand procedures that keep police safe. What to do if you are stopped in a car. How many times I know that Superintendent McGrath has worked with the Race for Peace in a great way to have meetings with members of the public around the region about what to do if you're stopped. And so that citizens, children, school children can learn the police perspective. But how many times have the police gone to Lower Merion schools, to Welsh Valley, to the middle schools, to the high schools, and say, if you're stopped by the police, this is how scary it is for us, and this is what you should do, whether you're stopped on foot or in a car, and open up a dialogue. Number six, police need to view all people as equals. 7, the need to pull people over for small offenses should be explained. I think they might have done that, but it's something important in each instance. 9, utmost importance to treating citizens with respect. 10, police need to carefully explain why you are being stopped. 12, importance of respect, trust, and communication. 13, I grew up with a community police, and we had an interaction with the officer every single day. We need to return to a model where you know your neighborhood police officer. 14, police athletic league on Saturdays, off hours. We knew officers by name. Police come back to the neighborhoods on evenings and weekends. How much of that was done since 2015? 18, how do we help the police build the necessary relationship with the community? 23, diversity within the police department is allowed at the recruitment stage. 27, police need to understand people, especially women at night, feel vulnerable. 28, knowing your officer is important. 29, we need to examine incidents such as the Nathaniel Williams matter to build understanding. That was a guy with a heart condition.
Mr. Gordon, I don't mean to interrupt, but we tend to have a 3-minute limit. We've sort of gone over, so if you're in the home stretch, that would be good.
For clarification, I thought the 3-minute limit was public privilege of the floor.
Well, we do have other people who are waiting to speak. That's my understanding.
All right. I'll move it forward. The Nathaniel's incident was a man who had a heart condition, and he was stopped because he was identified by a black police officer as someone who had possibly committed a robbery. And tasers were held out. Tasers also need to be studied especially after the Taser company came out with a warning saying these aren't as safe as we originally represented them to be. Police are scared too. The public needs to know the protocol for what to do when stopped. Let me go on. We need to look at the police race relations models in other U.S. cities and suburbs abroad. We need to find examples where police departments are successful in race relations. So it goes by saying that these were the items that were put on the table in 2015. It's a long time ago. What has been done, what hasn't been done, what could be done by this police chief, what could be done by the next police chief. The issues are complicated and require fine-tuned solutions. Finally, we'd like to have you think about how we can address better police relations going forward. Perhaps an ongoing meeting with interested commissioners and members of the NAACP and the public. We need to open a dialogue and have a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have public comment?
I have 2 people online, I'll put them through now.
Okay, thank you, Jody.
And I have 3 people online now. The first is Zandra O'Neill.
Hi, I'm Zandra O'Neill. I live in Wynwood. I'm shocked. A 1-day suspension. I've been sitting here listening to everyone else, and I still feel that shock in my body. Officer Murphy should be relieved of his duty immediately. Anything short of that sends the message to other officers that that behavior is acceptable, because no one's going to think that a 1-day suspension is enough of a deterrent for that egregious behavior. And if the hope is to repair and restore trust within the community, there needs to be a policy of more transparency so that members of the community can feel safe with those whose duty is said to be to protect and serve. This action does nothing to protect or serve those who have been traumatized at the hands of Lower Merion police officers again and again and again. This recommended action is a punch in the gut to this community. You can do better. You must do better. As was stated by others, all officers present that day are complicit in what happened. If you vote for a 1-day suspension and not termination of Officer Murphy and the other recommendations mentioned by the NAACP, you are complicit too.
Thank you.
The next person is Gigi Tevlin Moffett. Ms. Moffett? Yeah, I can see that she's online.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I pushed the wrong button. I apologize. Gigi Moffett, Narberth Borough, former Vice President of Narberth Borough Council and in charge of public safety at that time. First and foremost, thank you for allowing me to speak. Secondly, how any police committee is taking any of the 3 recommendations by this superintendent is beyond shocking and somewhat insulting to the community. And I would suggest that you reject all 3 of them. My first question is, have these officers that are being recommended, have they been screened for bias, and have they passed a psychological evaluation regarding the issues, ideas, and concerns that the public have brought forward? Secondly, with the disciplinary action piece, really, I mean, beyond the pale here, 8 hours. Is that with or without pay? We haven't heard that. This is insulting in the opposite extreme of the actions that the community has asked for. I would suggest, once again, that a full outside investigation not done by community members. I differ with Mr. Gordon there. We need professional people who understand what has to be done here and handle the situation professionally. I would suggest that if Superintendent McGrath remain for the rest of his term here, that he release the internal document and Mr. McNeely do so as well. I would suggest again that the the police committee be changed, and that 3 white men should be dismissed of their charge. You've heard the shocking amount from Crystal Blunt of what has gone on in this community. I think it's time for a very clear and honest change. And I would suggest once again that anyone who's sitting on a police committee take the state program regarding management of a police department. It is offered to you free, ladies and gentlemen. I am beside myself that anyone would take any recommendations from this police department at this time. It is appalling, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jody, do you have anybody else?
Yes, Jamie Mogul.
Okay.
Hi, sorry it's in the dark here. Jamie Mogul, Haverford. I guess I'm often left speechless, which I'm sure some of you will find surprising. This is shocking, but surprising, especially as this is an internal investigation and an internal decision of the police. Essentially, why wouldn't you protect your own? But I think this also puts us, meaning the board and this township, with an opportunity to respond in a proportionate manner, as this is not. And it's quite scary to think that Officer Murphy will be put back into the community and so-called tasked with protecting our community, because I tell you now, you must vote no on this recommendation. If you do anything other than that, like supporting it, you're basically complicit, as the other said. You're saying it's okay to pull a gun on a woman of color when they're pulled over for a traffic stop after putting their flashers on and pulling into a public parking lot, then being tased and dragged from their car. And then let's not forget, subsequently charged and arrested by those very same police that assaulted her. And it was very shocking to me to learn these charges that were brought against her were not by the DA. I want to make that clear. They were made by the police. These offenses are not done by the DA. The Montgo DA does not have a charging unit. So you must, as a police committee, make recommendations that allow you to have the proper oversight, because that means these police officers not only assaulted this woman, but then decided the probable cause to arrest her. Then they also put forth different press releases, which you also had no review and oversight of, to make their case of reframing this message, and then got to investigate themselves. So I also encourage you that you must do an outside investigation by a neutral party with no affiliation with the township, whether elected or staff members or the police or the county, to do a full investigation and help our community. Because at the end of the day, we're going to pay for this and nothing's going to change. You can have all the policies you want. That's great. Use of force, de-escalation, but we're proving to everybody they don't mean anything, because it's the people who are enforcing them, like this superintendent here, who his own police have said they do not like, that he's got to go. And he's presenting these things today. And we're paying, us as taxpayers, and we're going to have to take the brunt now. You can't even talk to us because there's the threat of litigation. So the police should not be investigating themselves, and please put into some protocols for review and approval and oversight of the police, who then get to, I guess, testify to prove their case. And there's nothing that we can do except pay up. So please make a stand and do your job.
Anybody else?
One more person, Kim Lippitz.
Okay.
Yeah, I was not planning on speaking tonight. I was just planning on listening, so I don't have my camera set up. But I am so shocked by the recommendation that I just need to express how shocking that is. I was at the larger meeting when the superintendent presented the PowerPoint presentation when the audience was filled. I was equally shocked. I was not planning on speaking that night. I was visiting my father at the time, I was so shocked at the narrative of the PowerPoint presentation the evening that this was presented to the community, and really the spin in a way that really was alarming. And I don't know a lot about the Lower Merion Police Department. What I do know about it now is really upsetting. So I don't see how in good conscience any one of you could possibly vote for that level. I mean, one day, that's an insult. I can't even believe that the superintendent just recommended an 8-hour suspension for what we all witnessed on a videotape, and what he spun before the videotape in a PowerPoint presentation that clearly you guys didn't review, because the PowerPoint presentation before the video was even played was offensive. So this is going to create, there's outrage in the community over this, even though maybe the audience isn't filled. People are tuning in, people are aware of this, and there are a lot of allies who really want to voice support for our Black and brown neighbors. This is not okay where I live. I do not want to live in a community where the superintendent of police would recommend an 8-hour suspension for this level of abuse, and have a board of commissioners who, I understand somewhat, okay, you can't talk because of litigation, but you got to say something. You got to say something, whether it's in adopting the proposals by the NAACP, but you guys can't sit there and do nothing, because it's a really bad look. Thank you.
Thank you. Wish to make public comment?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Roxana Wright. I am co-chair of Power Main Line, and I'm also working in NAACP. Let me say, it's wonderful to hear what everyone has to say, but what we are saying is this is not an ask, this is a demand. And what we are also saying is we want and we are expecting to hear from you in 2 weeks. Bottom line, it's a demand, these are demands, and we want to hear from you in 2 weeks. That's it.
Thank you. Jody, is there anybody else online?
There is not.
Okay. Keeping in mind what I said earlier about their instructions from our outside counsel, if anybody wishes to make public comment, or if somebody wants to make a motion. Commissioner Bernheim.
Thank you very much, Commissioner McComb, and I will try my best to adhere to the recommendations that you've passed on regarding our council as I intend to make a motion here. I'll note at the outset that the recommendation which comes to us, it weighs very heavily. I will tell you, just from myself personally speaking, I have the utmost respect for Superintendent McGrath, and he has earned that respect in the number of years that I've been on this board on countless occasions. However, I disagree with the recommendation that has been presented to us this evening. As a board, we are charged with the responsibility to evaluate, either accept or reject that recommendation. Most recently, when there was another recommendation that was made that we did adhere to as a board regarding punishment of a particular officer, a lieutenant, we received from members of the police force criticism for that was too light of a reprimand. And we take to heart that which people tell us, be it members of our police, members of our public, and recognize whether it's an officer or a member of command staff that we need to have some consistency. So in careful consideration of all that has gone on and the totality of those circumstances, and adhering to policies of the Lower Merion Police Department, which includes, but is not limited to, issues regarding the pursuit itself, the conduct of what occurred at the time of the pullover, the lack of having a body cam on, The circumstances which caused the use of force, the actual use of force, that this totality of circumstances demands, in order for us to be consistent with that which we have done before, a suspension greater than 8 hours. In my tenure on the board, other than suspensions which have been permanent, I think the most that's ever occurred is one which has been equivalent to 5 days. My recommendation is that we have a suspension which doubles that, which would be 80 hours, which would be something twice as much which has happened at least, in the past decade, and that be something that we, then consider, so that indeed it is appropriate for the misconduct that we have seen, and that it also delivers a message to those within the police force that, yeah, we've heard from you when we were too light before, we are not now, and that they understand that this is something that is taken with extreme seriousness. Issues of policies and protocols, that we will leave for another day and another time for determination. And while there are a number of things that come to mind and a number of responses that I would have to many of the comments that were made here this evening, I will defer that to just having made the motion that the suspension that this board approved, given these set of circumstances, be an 80-hour suspension.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. It's been seconded by Commissioner Grimes. Are there any other further commissioner comments with respect to the motion made by Commissioner Bernheim?
Commissioner Crump?
Yes, President Sinai.
Yeah, so I wanted to respond to public comment, if I may.
Certainly.
Okay, at least in brief, and I apologize for being on Zoom. It's, as my colleagues know, but the audience does not. I would have been there in person tonight, but I tested positive for COVID, and so I am here, the closest I can get, and I'd wanted to be there in person, especially for this issue. I also want to thank everyone who spoke tonight, both in person and virtually. And wanted to respond with just a couple of things. And I think, as everyone recognizes, you can't really speak to the particular incident on January 8th for the reasons that Commissioner McComb gave. But I do want to say a couple of things. The first is, this board is the representative of the community. I recognize that there's a lot of calls for broader representation, and those are important, and that's something that the board is working on. I recognize that there are calls for external investigation or community groups, but let me tell you that this board has spent a very long time in careful consideration trying to understand the issues that are at play here, and represent not only the community, but like all the stakeholders in this. And that's a role that we take very seriously. The other thing is, I want to thank the speakers, but especially the NAACP of the main line, for really, bringing a number of things to the fore, for us to consider. And there are really two issues going on here. One is the issue of the actual traffic stop and use of force incident, but the other is all the other issues and topics that particular incident has raises, or really re-raises, in this community, and it makes it an opportune time to revisit them as a board in the community. And so we will and are doing that in considering many issues, including some of the ones that were raised. And I have a personal preference for how to do this. My preference is that we proceed thoughtfully and carefully and with broad input and thoroughly, rather than hastily. And so that is how we tend to go. I appreciate the offer of collaboration. I think that is a terrific standard. And there are a number of to have really what is a police department that consistently meets the high standards that we on this board and the community that we represent demand. We should be continually working on it. And I look forward to doing that with my colleagues on this board, and with the members of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, President Sinai. Any other commissioner comment? Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you very much. Superintendent McGrath, I just wanted this just information. It's my understanding during this incident that a taser was discharged, but it didn't deploy. Is that correct?
No. It is correct. It deployed.
I think it's a terminology issue. Taser was utilized. It did not have its intended impact, which is to mobilize somebody.
Okay. I just wanted to clear that because the use of person being tased, that would be inaccurate.
Taser was utilized, however, it did not accomplish what it is built to do.
Okay. I have other things to say, but my attorney says no. But if Commissioner Zeloff would like to make a comment, I might build on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Churchill. Commissioner Zaloff.
Thank you, Commissioner McComb. Ongoing dialogue between the community and this elected body, which, as our president has said, has spent a great deal of time on this very important issue, is the engagement and the dialogue is very important both in this public forum and outside of it. A suspension is without pay. That question was asked. There were two policy violations. The failure to wear the body-worn camera is a serious one. The pursuit, less so. But the use of force procedures in the police officer's response followed procedures and were not excessive. Poor judgment. Skills learned in de-escalation training were not used. But this board is unbiased in its decision-making. I've seen it for a long time. It was suggested otherwise. 30 years ago, the Police Minority Relations Committee, as it is now named, was created for good reason. And it functions very effectively in a two-way method, two-way approach with the police department, the community, and the community back to the police department. And I think it's worthwhile to note that of the 7 or 8, I believe it's 8 charges from the driver, the district justice upheld those charges and they have been submitted to the Common Pleas Court. There was a suggestion that there should be an outside investigation of the incident. The internal investigation has been as public as any investigation I've ever seen in this township. It's been transparent, it's been documented, it's been discussed publicly, and it's been discussed several times, well, 2 times with the Police Minority Relations Committee. I don't think another investigation is necessary. We all know what happened. I cannot support the 80 hours of suspension that has been proposed. Thank you, Commissioner McComb.
Thank you, Commissioner Zell. Commissioner Kramer.
I'd just like to say that thank you. I respectfully disagree with my colleague, Commissioner Zeloff, and thank you, Commissioner Bernheim, for stating so much more eloquently than I could our charge and our responsibility. And I'd like to thank everyone here for your thoughtful comments and for the offer of cooperation. And I intend to take you up on it.
Would you mind speaking up?
I'm done.
Okay.
You heard. Sorry. I know. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Try that again.
Any other? Commissioner Courtney?
Thank you, Commissioner McComb. I have trouble with this because we've been told not to speak on specifics. So the last time I was asked to vote on disciplinary action that I didn't necessarily agree with, I referred to the police mission statement. So I'm going to read a section of the police mission statement. It's the very end. It says, "We show respect. We commit ourselves to uniting the public and the police by treating each other in an unbiased, dignified, and compassionate manner. We value the diversity of our community by providing timely, impartial, and courteous service to all. I hope it's clear how I feel about whether the police have lived up to that part of their mission. I think the call for independent review of our training and our policies is a good one. And I don't think the disciplinary action recommended by the superintendent is in keeping with this mission statement. Out of respect for my colleagues, I will vote in favor of Commissioner Bernheim's recommendation of 2 weeks, but it doesn't sit well with me that we aren't going further on this.
Any other commissioner comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote on Commissioner Bernheim's motion for the suspension of the officer for 80 hours. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, the motion carries.
What was the vote?
8-4.
It was 9 in favor and 4 opposed.
Vice President Gavin, that concludes the business of the Police Committee.
Great, thank you very much, Commissioner McComb. We're not done for the evening. We do have our special Board of Commissioners meeting, and I will call to order the March 8, 2023 special meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Lower Merion. All please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, if you'd be so kind as to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Ms. O'Neill has asked to be excused. Mr. Bernheim.
Present.
Mr. Churchill.
Here.
Mr. Courtney.
Here.
Mr. Gavin.
Present.
Mr. Grimes.
Here.
Ms. S. Kramer. Here. Ms. G. Kramer.
Here.
Mr. McComb.
Here.
Mr. McKeon.
Here.
Mr. Stevenson.
Present.
Mr. Whalen.
Here.
Mr. Zeloff.
Here.
Mr. Sinai.
Here.
Mr. Vice President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The first section will be public comment. This is the section of the meeting where members of the public may address the board on agenda items, which are the 3 items referred from the Police Committee meeting held earlier this evening. Please keep comments to 3 minutes or less. And if there's a group of people who are speaking on the same topic, we ask that a spokesperson be selected to address the board and they keep their comments to 5 minutes or less. Comment will first be taken from those present in the room and then from those attending virtually. Again, please use the podium to the right and speak directly into the microphone. And for those on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand if you'd like to speak during public comment. And for all members of the public, please, again, introduce yourself prior to beginning your comments. And I don't have to talk about the rest. So if there is any public comment, please come to the podium.
Adrian Seltzer, Wynwood. I am extremely disappointed in the board thinking that 80 hours is enough after hearing public comment and all the comments that you have gotten throughout these last weeks. It saddens me that the understanding of the trauma that you have put the Black and brown community through has not gotten through to you. It really has. So, that's all I have to say. I'm very disappointed.
Thank you. Any other comment? Jody, any comment online?
I have one person online, Sandra O'Neill.
Okay. Ms. O'Neill?
Sandra O'Neill, Wynwood. It is clear as day. The community is telling you that there are people in our community, and really all of us, because it affects all of us. We do not feel safe. The Black and brown members of our community especially, but this does not keep any of us safe. That you can't see that 2 weeks is still in the scheme of things
better than a day, sure, but a day is setting the bar so incredibly low. This is an opportunity for you to share the values of the community, of the people who have elected you and put you in the position to make a decision here. And it's disheartening that 2 weeks is the best that you feel you can do.
Thank you. Is there any other comment? Jody? Are we?
Yes. Jamie Mogul.
Okay. Ms. Mogul?
Good evening, Jamie Mogul, Haverford. I want to follow up and say that the board should adopt protocols for review and approval of public statements that impact the township's liability. In this recent incident, which we previously discussed, that was the tasing of the Black woman. The press releases, press conferences, statements, even the press release of a statement regarding the killing of another person of color by a police department, all of that was done without review or oversight, and potentially exposing the township and taxpayers like myself and others to unnecessary liability. So it should be part of that oversight when not to talk and not to give public statements. However, that doesn't seem to be a part of the process. I'd also encourage the board, when there are aggressive or use of force or de-escalation violations, that those are brought to the board before any charges are brought that could impact, again, the liability and risk of the township. Because again, at the end of the day, that's part of your job, which is the oversight of that department. But right now, it doesn't seem that you have the ability to do that when it comes to public statements. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no more public comment, any, we do response to public comment or no? Is there any response to public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to Police Committee. And unless anyone objects, I'm going to make a single motion to approve the 3 items recommended by the Police Committee. Are there any objections to doing it all as one motion?
Yes.
Okay, so I will do 3 separate motions. The first motion is a motion regarding the authorization of disciplinary action. I will move to approve an 80-hour suspension of a police officer as recommended during the Police Committee. Do I have a second? Commissioner Bernheim? Any comment from the board? Seeing none, we'll call this for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand, signifying aye. All those opposed? Okay. Madam Secretary, do we have a count?
Yes, 9 in favor, 4 opposed.
9 to 4, okay. I will make a motion to authorize the township manager to make conditional offers of employment to 3 police applicants who have fulfilled the civil service requirements for eligibility. Do I have a second? Thank you. Commissioner McComb, any comment from the board? Seeing none, call it for vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Seeing none, that passes unanimously. And the third motion, I move to authorize the promotion of Sergeant Sean Clifford to the rank of lieutenant and Officer Ronald Eckhart to the rank of sergeant from the list of candidates certified by the Civil Service Commission effective March 13, 2023, as recommended by the Superintendent of Police. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner McComb. Any comment from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Commissioner Stevenson, is that an abstention or a yes?
I'm oversight. That was a yes.
Thank you very much. With that, that concludes the business of the Special Board of Commissioner meeting. We are adjourned.